You will have a list of 10 to 15 people from my side by the deadline you originally anticipated.
Hello. Great. Ala, same with you, or at least the word's getting out there. Oop, did we lose Ala? Well, it looks like anyways, everybody's coming in. So let me share my screen. Hold on. Okay, I'm all set. Ala, you still there?
Perfect. I think I can see your screen. Sorry, my internet dropped a little.
No worries. We know how that goes.
Great, and we have STF joining in as well. Hello, everyone. Andres, Danielle, Abdullah, Michelle, Nancy, Naveen.
Oops, sorry. Great to see a lot of folks. Is there a pre-conference this year? No pre-conference, right?
No pre-conference, yes, unfortunately.
Yeah, unfortunately, yeah.
Perfect. I'll just give 2 minutes for other people who are joining to join, and then we can start just to make sure we're right on time. Perfect. I guess we can start because no one else is joining yet. Are you good to start now?
I am.
Perfect. So I can introduce everyone. So hello, STF and Student Task Force. It's very happy for us to have you all here today for our first webinar with ScholarRx in medical school for us by us. I would not want to steal the thunder, and I will let our speakers introduce themselves. But today with us, we have ScholarRx team. We're joined by Tao, Jeff, and Katerina. And yes, over to Tao, who's going to give you a thorough introduction about himself.
Great, fantastic. Ala, thank you for that kind introduction. My name is Tao Lee. I am the founder and chief education officer for ScholarRx. And USLRX. Some of you may know me as the editor of a book called First Aid for the USLA Step 1. I'm based in the United States, where I am a clinical professor at the University of Louisville in allergy and immunology, and really grateful and excited to be working with I can say EMSA and AMEE for the last few years, and then and really being able to support the Student Task Force. I know the hard work that you guys have done in your blue shirts. I've seen you every year for the last several years. When I myself attend the various AMEE meetings, I'm so sorry I won't be able to see you folks in person. But again, it's an honor to speak to you because I look at you as the future of medical education. I look at you as the ones that will be leading AMEE and organizations like AMEE, in the future. So again, what we'll what we'll do is we'll have a talk about about how you can be empowered to take control of your own medical education on a global scale, and then we'll have a discussion at the very end, and I'll bring some of my colleagues involved, in some of whom you already know. So as a matter of fact, in fact, I need to thank some of them. So in fact, working with us, we have 3 ScholarRx education fellows, and you probably recognize some of their names. Carolina Rodriguez, Vagilis, and Katerina. In fact, Katerina, would you like to just quickly introduce yourself? Though I suspect most people already know you.
Sure. Hey, I'm Katerina. So I met some of you last year at the AMEE Student Task Force, and I was the previous SCOME director of IFMSA, where I met Tao and got involved with ScholarRx.
Great, and Katerina and we worked on a presentation, a workshop together about student empowerment last year, which I thought went really well. And same thing, I've been working with Katerina Dimba when she was the LME, at IFMSA, and Vagilis when he was working in Felipe's role at EMSA. And of course, my huge thanks and appreciation to Ala and Felipa, not just with them wearing their hats as student task force co-chairs, but also with their respective leadership roles within IFMSA and EMSA with regards to our collaboration. We'll talk a little bit about later on. All right, so as I mentioned, I got involved in medical education at a very early stage in my career, and it started with this book called First Aid for the U.S. Step 1. Many of you may be aware of this book. It was written for the United States Medical Licensing. Hello?
Maybe Mark, so that you can mute everyone.
Thank you. Yeah. If you're on a line that's noisy, please mute yourself. That'd be super helpful. Thank you so much. But in any case, so I've worked on this book for many years, and one of the things that many students may be aware is that this book was actually started. I'll get to this a little bit later, but again, so this is how I got started in medical education. And then over time, we grew into more first aid books that we publish, and we also launched our digital platform about 15 years ago. And through these learning initiatives, these global learning initiatives, we have reached over 2 million medical learners. And each year through our books and so forth, students are reading 90 million pages per year, and they're doing 70 million digital learning activities every year on the ScholarRx platform. And the question I have with you is, what do these resources have in common? So I'll pause there for a second and let you think. So it turns out that you are actually the engine behind all these resources. All these resources were created by medical students. The original First Aid for the U.S. Step 1 was created at the University of California, San Francisco School of Medicine, where I went to medical school. And then as we grew First Aid and then as we grew ScholarRx, we recruited passionate medical student educators, not just from U.S. where I'm based, but all over the world. And we now have students and educators that are participating from just about any part of the world: Europe, Asia, Africa, South America, all over the place at any given time. So that's what's really exciting and about where medical education go in the future, because we already know that this works. We already know that we can create, that students can create top quality medical education that can be used by millions of other learners, including physicians, who are senior to them, in their training and in their career. So if we take it down to more of a local level, where you are at your schools and so forth, why should you be involved in medical education? So, this is something that Katerina and Katerina have discussed. And in fact, they provided me with some of this information. It's good for the curriculum at your school, because your unique perspective as a student is incorporated in it. It's good for the students and around you and for you, because this gives you an opportunity to develop your skills as an educator, develop skills in leadership, management. Also critical to your future career as a physician, regardless of whether you are in academia, whether you are in healthcare, whether you're in health policy, whatever you decide to do. It's good for the school, right? Because it increases the positive student faculty interactions, and it's good for the educators themselves because it provides feedback. All right, great. So it also turns out that the major medical accreditation organizations also believe that you as a future physician should also develop your skills as an educator. So the General Medical Council in the United Kingdom says that basically physicians should be able to function effectively as a mentor and teacher, right? So that's directly from their guidelines. The Canadians also say that physicians should be able to plan and deliver a learning activity and to provide feedback and to assess and evaluate others. In the United States, our accreditation committee says that students need to be involved in self-directed learning. So in other words, they want you to have some responsibility, some ownership, some agency in your own learning, deciding what you need to learn, what's important, and how to get there. So it's all part of lifelong learning, because obviously once you're into clinical practice or even academia, there may not be those folks there to continue to hold your hand. You have to take responsibility for your own learning. All right. And AMEE itself, right, strongly encourages student engagement in medical education, right? And so in fact, this is actually embedded in their Aspire Awards, right? So a school can win an award for student engagement. And the criteria that school has to meet for student engagement includes the student being involved meaningfully in the management of the school, in their education program, within the academic community, so research and scholarship, and also in the local community, so affecting their local region. All right. So let's talk about how you should be involved. So you've heard of the term pedagogy and probably potentially andragogy as well too. It basically translates into adult learning theory, adult learning frameworks, and within those frameworks, it's generally agreed upon that we as adults, even medical students, technically you are adults, you need to be involved in the planning and evaluation of your own instruction. That being said, medical student involvement in their own education varies historically from school to school, region to region, and so forth. What you have over here is the learning engagement ladder by Roger Hart and popularized by Adam Fletcher. And what you see here is that you can see that there can be various levels of engagement. On the lower level, you're just simply present. In the middle levels, you are part of the discussion, but you might not be part of the decision making. And at the top level, you are involved in decision making, all the way up to student adult equity, where the role of the students are adjusted to make sure that they can participate equally in the decision making process with the professional educators in the room, the deans, the course directors, at your various institution. And ultimately, that's where we hope students have a consistent role. And if it's not, it's something that obviously you should aspire to work towards. And I certainly know that EMSA, IFMSA, and AMEE are certainly driving, and advocating for those types of changes. All right. So next, let me just switch slides here. Let's talk about potential obstacles. So that being said, why sometimes don't students get involved, or or at least not involved at those high levels? So turns out, of course, you're busy, right? You're studying to become a physician. It's hard work. There's a lot of there's a lot of time involved. Some of you, or some students, of course, I know it's not you, but some of your classmates may not be interested. I certainly, while I can certainly understand that, based on what I just talked about earlier about how everybody believes that all students should have some sort of education experience. Hopefully, everyone will eventually be enlightened that they realize that they should have some sort of education interest. I'll make one more point, which is, even if you don't see yourselves teaching other colleagues like medical students or residents or trainees or other physicians through continuing medical education or continuing professional development, if you do any type of patient care, at a minimum, you are engaged in patient education, and the techniques and the learning frameworks and the outcomes frameworks are very similar for professional education as well. Third, as you can imagine, faculty and deans like to be in charge. That's obviously what they're paid to do. But as we said, they should be working hand in hand with you. And then finally, there may be issues with lack of time and resources for educational electives, the student professional development that's necessary to give you the skills, the competencies, to participate in these discussions. All righty. And so, oh yeah, great. Glad to see that somebody actually dropped the Aspire Excellence Award criteria in the chat. So fantastic. Thank you. So how can you get involved? So, at your school, there should be local curriculum committees. Some schools are very, again, forward thinking, and they have meaningful student involvement. Others, I think you need to be perhaps more aggressive and more forward and suggest involvement by students. Luckily, through your organizations like the European Medical Student Association, the International Federation, AMEE and IAMSE, the International Association of Medical Science Educators in the United States, there are multiple groups where you can get involved. They all have task force committees, standing committees that are dedicated to education, and also particularly at AMEE and IAMSE, both of these have groups, organizations, task force, and so forth, where students have agency. They are in fact either in charge or part of the leadership team in terms of developing initiatives and policies that impact the rest of the organization. And for us, we have what's called the New Educator Scholars Training Program. Some of you might have overheard Ala, Filipa, and I talking about this just at the very beginning. We have our own program for student professional development, or student as educator. It's completely free. It's a virtual program. We've been running it for many years. We used it to train all of our senior authors, and we decided to open it up to rising medical educators, in our partner organizations like IFMSA and EMSA. And as a matter of fact, I know they're getting the word out to in terms of inviting you to apply and participate in this program. Thank you, Ala, for that comment. All right. So that actually is also a segue into our global collaboration. This has been building up for over a year and a half, and we're excited to go public really soon with some branding, a logo, and some education. But what we decided to do was we reached out to these organizations, and we were very gratified that people like Ala and Filipa, and of course Carolina and Vagilis and other Carolina, Kat, I guess, shared our vision, our passion for student empowerment medical education, and also the idea that there should be inclusivity and diversity. And so pulling together multiple diverse organizations, representing many countries, representing many student members to essentially create the largest student-driven curriculum alliance in the world. And that's another way that you can get involved. And we'll talk a little bit more about how you can individually get involved through your organizations like IFMSA and EMSA. All right, so I'm going to pivot from student empowerment to my next theme, which is sharing and collaboration. And why should we do it? And why now? Why now? What's driving all this? So I co-authored an invited commentary a couple of years ago in the Journal of Academic Medicine, which is published by the AAMC, with my good friend and colleague, who's also the chair of my academic advisory board, Charles Prober. He's a senior associate vice provost of health education at Stanford University, and is the immediate former dean of medical education there as well too. We developed this idea for a shared curricular ecosystem, a global curricular ecosystem. So, why? What's going on? Well, what's the current situation? Well, as you can probably guess, medical education often occurs in silos. If you think about it, a lot of times your school is not communicating with anybody else. It's really its own little universe, if you will. And it turns out when there are many little universities or little fiefdoms, if you have it, or little kingdoms, then schools tend to do the same thing. They tend to duplicate, right? They tend to reinvent the wheel because they think that, well, it's only happening here. They hadn't thought about talking to somebody else. But that seems to not make a lot of sense. Think about it, especially many of you are coming from different parts of the world where there's not a lot of resources, right? So and even in places like the US where we theoretically have a lot of resources, we still have very tight budgets where we come from. We don't have a lot of funding. And so, even in high income regions of the world, we are strapped, we are very restricted in our resources. And this just seems incredibly illogical and inefficient during a global pandemic when everything we need to do, is being funneled towards, getting through and conquering and getting over this major, pandemic. So we proposed the idea of creating a common curricular ecosystem that's based on commonly accepted core learning objectives and competencies, based on input from leading bodies in medical education accreditation and certification, and also from student bodies as well too, and being standards based so that we can develop and share and interconnect all these resources at scale. If we do this, we can potentially make education really accessible and affordable to all. We can potentially address the global shortage of healthcare professionals, and we can also provide for uninterrupted learning and teaching, particularly during a pandemic when a lot of schools are shut down or were severely restricted in what they can do, especially if they don't, if they don't have that, that much to, especially in low resource regions of the world. All right. So what goes into an ecosystem framework, right? So there's a couple of theoretical things that we need to think about. One you need the content itself, but not just any content. You need the content in a specific way, organized and developed and pointed in a specific direction. So the term that we use is RLO, reusable learning objects. And in fact, that's something that Ron Harden, has worked with in the past. It was coined by a fellow named Wiley many years ago, any digital resource that can be used to support learning. But there's really more to that. It has to be reusable, right? So it has to be relevant. It has to be, it has to be usable beyond the original audience. It has to be context neutral, so you can maximize where you use it. Obviously, it has to be about learning. There has to be a pedagogy, an explicit pedagogy involved, and ideally something that involves interactive learning, because we all know from learning theory that's the best type of learning, right? You being involved. And then And then itself as an object, it has to be packaged up, it has to be self-contained, it has to be unitized, right? So limited to one concept or one learning goal, so that people can properly peg this. I mentioned a little bit earlier about technical standards. Technical standards tend to be a very abstract concept, right? But what it simply means is, what are the rules by how all these components work together, how they're built, and so forth. So I'll give you an example of technical standards. The railroads in Europe and in the United States, for many years, back in the 1800s, the railroads couldn't actually work with you. Why? Because basically each railroad company created tracks for their trains that were different widths, right? So as you can imagine, if the train tracks are a different width, the trains couldn't go in different parts of Europe or the UK or the United States. Only did they all standardize to the same railroad track widths in the 1800s, were the trains able to use and go across the country or go across the continent, and be able to really, scale that quote unquote technological innovation up, right? The railroad versus, horse and buggy. So, so again, if we get the right technical standards, it will allow for scalability, which relates to efficiency, interoperability, which is sharing, right? So being able to create a learning unit and then share it with another school or another organization or student organization or a local student or regional organization. And accessibility, the ability to find what you need. And if we do all this right, then you can accelerate the adoption cycle. So it's not just the innovators and the early adopters and the dreamers that are using this, but it's everybody. This has to be inclusive. This has to be accessible to everyone. All right. So the third, I think, element of a shared ecosystem framework is what's called a community practice. This is popularized by Etienne Wenger over 20 years ago. And ST has a couple of components. It has the community itself. So that may be us. That the community can be defined as any group. So for us, it's us and our collaboration with the message group with the 6 international medical student organizations. And then the domain that we're interested in, which is medical education. And then finally, the practice of how do we develop shared practices, with our collaborators and, scale it up and propagate that so everybody can benefit. So, if we do, again, our job right and we set up this community of practice the right way, particularly with MESSAGE, the Medical Student Alliance for Global Education, then everybody should feel a sense of connectedness, belonging, that we're all in this together, right? Because we're all pulling for the same goals, right? And everybody has active and meaningful roles. It's not saying that my role is the same as yours, but whatever roles we have, we believe in it. We recognize that it contributes to the community, and that it makes sense. And then through that, it provides a sense of empowerment, that we feel engaged and that we have agency, and we feel that we have free will in what we want to do and how we can contribute to the community. All right. So again, if you look up Etienne Wenger's work, you can see that it tends to be an important part of medical education communities of practice. All right. So let's talk a little bit about ecosystem examples here. And so in the United States, probably the most well-known one is MedEd Portal. You might have been aware of it internationally. It's a open access learning resource repository. It's also a journal. It's a Medline indexed. It's developed and operated by the American Association of Medical Colleges and the American Dental Association. They publish over 130 resources per year, all peer-reviewed, and it's downloaded 36,000 times a year by educators and learners, throughout the world, and it's completely free. As I mentioned, Ron Harden has worked on something in the past called IVI Meds. which was also kind of an effort to put together virtual learning across a number of schools. And so that's an example of another shared curricular ecosystem. As I mentioned, we have developed our own shared curricular ecosystem. So in our consortium that developed, we work with over 50 partner schools, institutions, and associations, including the 6 international medical student associations within Message. We are striving to develop a low-cost curricular ecosystem of modular learning units called bricks. These bricks can be used throughout healthcare, medical, dental, pharmacy, and other health education settings. What's really unique about what we're trying to do is that the community in the future will be able to modify, or actually can modify the bricks, and very soon we'll be able to create new bricks completely by themselves. So that's what's really exciting. So I'll show you what a brick looks like. So and as a matter, in fact, we'll talk about how you can, actually access it yourself in just a little bit. So this is our site. When you log in, there is I'll just go to the dashboard because I might as well show you now, because when you first log in, you'll see a dashboard that has a lot of metrics, that has a lot of resources and so forth. At the bottom are our learning bricks, and you can click here to browse those bricks, and then you'll take you to a page where it'll tell you what bricks that you've currently been working with, what bricks you have access to, the various collections. And you can see that right now we've built out this amazing preclinical collection of bricks for the first couple of years of medical school. We've just launched this in the last month or so. Before that was really in beta testing. And you can see that it covers everything from pathology, microbiology, to all the organ systems, cardiovascular, endocrine, and so forth. We have, promised that everything we do is affordable, but we've even provided some education for free. So, so for everyone, for all students of the world, we are offering the microbiology bricks and essentially the biochemistry bricks. This is cellular and molecular biology, completely for free. So you can get that at ScholarRx. I'll ask Jeff to provide a link to uslearnx.com/free-bricks, and you can go directly to that link. That's the link that you should share to your friends, to your colleagues, to your schools, and this is an incredible learning resource. You can see here, there's bricks that cover everything, in microbiology. This, in fact, can function as a complete microbiology course. So do check it out at no cost. I'm going to go to cardiovascular because there's a lot of integrated clinical learning that's starting to happen in medical education. So I'll show a little bit about how this works. So we're going to do this heart auscultation module here. So what you see is that we adhere to rigorous learning principles. So for example, we have Bloom's taxonomy learning objectives that are explicitly stated at the beginning of the learning experience. And then as you go to it, we directly start applying it right away. So every brick, no matter how basic it is, I don't care if it's T-cell maturation, I don't care if it's the Krebs cycle, we provide what's called a case connection. We provide a realistic, relatable event in this particular, that allows you to apply. In this particular case, this is about students at a medical community fair learning how to do heart auscultation. And they're teaching each other and trying to understand the classifications of murmurs in systolic and diastolic situations. And as you start going through this brick and you start interacting with it, you'll notice that this doesn't feel like anything you ever read before, right? It's very conversational. It's very engaging. It's very friendly, right? It was written by students just like you. We're all in this together. We're all trying to teach each other, right? But it's all done professionally because it's all backed up by world-class faculty and educators from around the world. It's also interactive, as I mentioned. For example, a lot of these images, not all, but a lot of these images are interactive, especially for things like identification of parts and structures. So for example, if you click on this, you can zoom in. You can also make it interactive. So if you want to quiz yourself on any structures of the heart, you can just simply click the button here, and then voila, you now have a heart quiz, right? So hey, what's that structure on the lower left? Is that the superior vena cava? No, it's the inferior vena cava. Is this the left ventricle? Yes, it is. And so you can quiz yourself and just click on it, and then you can use that, and it works on your mobile phone as well too. Alrighty, you can highlight, you can annotate. I don't think that was an annotation there. And also there's, depending on the topic, there's multimedia. So for example, systolic murmurs, it's not a learning module without the actual murmur, right? So here, if you want to listen to this, hopefully you can hear this through your computer. You can hear this, the aortic stenosis murmur, and you can even, compare it to other murmurs like aortic regurgitation, right? Where you can hear that the longer delay of the crescendo, decrescendo of that murmur, and compare to each other, right? And then as you go through it, again, this is an active learning experience. This is not an ebook. This is an interactive learning module. You continue to quiz yourself. You can quiz yourself on the mnemonics. So each of the mnemonics is basically a flashcard. And then there are other flashcards as well too that test you on all the major learning objectives. So what are the 5 systolic murmurs? So right, we just talked about it. So this is a learning check, and the learning check keeps you honest to make sure that you are on track with your learning. And again, you can do this by yourself without a professor, especially, again, especially in low resource areas. We have additional clinical correlations, right, about how this might be applied, in a clinical situation. And I'm just going to go to the very bottom just, for sake of time. But you can see there's many diagrams and images throughout. It's all very richly visually illustrated, visually integrated. And again, clinically relevant. At the very end, we revisit that case connection. If you don't remember what happened in the case, you can go back to the introduction. You can see that. You can read about what happened, about the scenario that you're being challenged with, and then you can go back and then answer the question. And then we provide a model answer for how you need to think about systolic and diastolic and continuous murmurs. Then we provide a high yield summary. So you come away with the key points. And then we provide multiple choice questions as well too that you can do. Unfortunately, I've already done these questions. But again, we are very, very big into, always testing you, always giving you opportunities to quiz yourself and learn through assessment. So you might have heard of the mantra, assessment for learning and not just of learning. It's a really important learning theory there. And then there are the learning objectives at the very end, so you can self-assess whether you did it or not. If you didn't, then you can go back and recheck that. But only after you check out the learning objectives is this module considered complete. And then for those of you that need to go into deeper, especially if you have to do any exam preparation, depending on what package you have, you can also add on all these additional resources, such as access to our first aid for the use of step 1. So here, if you click into it, I can show you that you can get directly into first aid here. This is from our ubiquitous textbook that's used globally. You can highlight it, you can annotate it, you can go to other parts of the book, whatever you think makes sense. And then when you're done, you can go back to that. Back to the brick where you started off from. So again, we lead with the foundational concepts, and then you can apply it, however you want, including in an exam preparation situation, like example, if you have an exam at the end of your semester or whatever. We also have, interactive flashcards, again, that are really high yield, and then that has remediation directly to first aid. We have videos, we have board style questions, all curated and integrated directly, with that brick. I won't, unfortunately don't have time to show it, but again, you can see that with this brick, you can have 2 videos that goes along with it and 16 board style questions you can use to, study, for that particular exam, related to heart murmurs. So I hope that was helpful. I'm glad to see that that a lot of people like what they see. So just keeping an eye here on time here. So what I want to say is that because we are a supporter of the Student Task Force, we have a partnership with AMEE. We were given permission by AMEE to actually provide you, because of what you do for the Student Task Force, we will be providing you with your own scholarship to RX 360 Plus, which includes the 800 learning modules, the 2,300 step 1 questions. Now, I know some of you are more on the clinical side. If you want our clinical question bank, we have a clinical question bank as well too. We can make that available. The Express videos, 80 hours worth of learning videos, 15,000 flashcards with spaced repetition. You can do this on a mobile app, especially in low resource situations. Every single one of you will get a scholarship for 6 months. This is our way of thanking you for your service, to AMEE, to the medical education community, and also hopefully to inspire you to create great education, because again, every single thing here was created by students just like you all over the world, all right? Hope you take advantage of it. At this point, I'm gonna get back to student empowerment a little bit. Remember how I talked about students creating first aid? So what I didn't really talk about, yeah, somebody put S2S. In fact, that was the name of our first publishing company, was Student to Student Medical Publishing, S2S. Fantastic, thank you, Michelle from Brazil there. So I didn't talk a lot about why we were doing it. We had to do this to help each other. 30 years ago, the US Only Step 1 was a brand new exam. There was literally no resources for this. We had very little guidance. So at UCSF, University of California, San Francisco, where I was a student, we started just spontaneously helping each other. We started collecting high yield facts. We started creating high yield charts and diagrams and mnemonics. And we started putting it into databases and tables and stuff like that, in an effort to say, hey, look, this is how we can help each other. It was a grassroots effort, and it then eventually gave birth to, as you see, First Aid for the US Only Step 1. So I think it's really important to understand the why, not just the how and the what, but why were we doing? We were doing this to help each other. We had no one else but each other, right? And so that's how I think we see message as well too. Medical Student Alliance for Global Education. Now, okay, of course, there are many education organizations out there, but there is no single medical student organization, there's no single global organization that we're well aware of that is solely focused on the education needs of medical students. Obviously, EMSA and IFSA have, committees, but this entire organization, its entire purpose, its entire mission is about empowering medical student education. And it's not just us creating and dictating and medical education from on high and handing it to you. We're actually saying, look, this is actually a shared responsibility. You have to help with the needs assessment. You are sharing in the development of the learning objectives. You are sharing responsibility in terms of content development, and you're also sharing in the implementation needs and the evaluation and all the scholarly research that will spin off of this project. This is completely 100% student driven, from the leadership, all the way to the development. Again, thanks to the work of Katerina, Vagilis, and Kat, as the education fellows, but also thanks to all the leadership of Message, Philippa and Ala, who have represented your organization on our council and our alliance for the past year with all these other international organizations. And based on what Ala and Philippa and Katerina have decided, they are focusing on these areas of medical education. So sexual and reproductive health rights. In fact, we've already published the first brick of this group, and with the rest to come, I hope in the next month or two. Diversity, equity, inclusion. This was something we actually identified last year. As you know, obviously there's a lot of discussion right now in the United States, particularly with the murder of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and so forth, that this is bringing the forefront. But the credit to the group, to the message group, for actually identifying this as a major issue well over a year ago, and then putting it on our curriculum roadmap. Digital health. We are obviously, we're learning and through digitally, and we are going to have to do more digital, especially with the pandemic. This was already identified. Student as educator. This is in fact part of the basis of this discussion. So Katerina and the other fellows are actually putting together an entire curriculum that we hope to share with all students about how you can become an educator and how you can become a change agent. And then social accountability. So these are major, I think, topical areas that often are not well addressed by medical schools. And it's not that they don't want to. Often they don't have the resources, they don't have time, they don't have the expertise. The message group feels, this alliance of medical student organizations feels that it has the the authority, the expertise, and the passion, most importantly, the passion to step into the space and to create free education that will be available to all schools, all student organizations, all medical organizations, to level the playing field for everybody, and to support global healthcare. So this, in fact, is the kickoff meeting for the Sexual and Reproductive Health Rights Working Group. This was done a couple of months ago. As you can see, here's Katerina. Here's Aliyah, who's our message director. She's based in the US. Humud's from Kuwait. I think Lara Lalukat is the chair of the Reproductive Health Rights Standing Committee. I believe there's an EMSA person here as well too. I don't remember. And then there's obviously US. You can see that just looking at the faces, it's a wide diversity of faces from all over the world. In fact, I joke that the only group that we're missing are older white men. So okay, so that's just a joke. Please take that in context. I don't want to offend everybody, but we are very big into diversity and inclusivity. So where do we think the future of sharing can go? You already saw what we're doing here with the BRICS and what Message is doing, but we are going to welcome anybody into our ecosystem. In the future, universities, if they want to share their education, they can develop their own BRICS and then share it with the world. Same thing with individual educators, professors, and so forth. There are many passionate educators out there that are just teaching to a class of 50, 100. Why can't they teach to millions, right? Why can't they teach to the millions of medical students and healthcare students who can benefit from their wisdom, right? But then let's think about completely revolutionize the definition of what an educator is. An educator doesn't have to be an MD, a PhD, an MBBS, or whatever. It's whoever has the passion, who has the expertise, who has the willingness to develop the skills, and then to be able to share their wisdom, their learning with the rest of the world. So that means each and every one of you can be an educator, right? And so we are challenging you as IFMSA, as EMSA, as Message, as AMSA, as SNMA, as SOMA, as Phi Delta Epsilon. We're challenging all of our organizational partners to develop their own education programs and share it with the world as well too. And we've been honored to work alongside with all of you and all of your organizations to develop the tools, develop the platforms, to develop the capabilities and capacity, to do this, again, on a global basis. So, so I hope this gives you a little bit of information. I hope this also provides a little bit of inspiration for where you can go as future medical educators. And then if you are very interested, you can obviously directly reach out to us. I would also strongly advise you to reach out to your, to the various leadership in IFMSA and EMSA, and including Felipa and Ala and their various leadership colleagues, because they can also funnel you into their various initiatives that are tied to Message. So, so with that, I want to thank you for your time. You folks have been great. I love all the comments And again, that's an example of being interactive. And I know we have about 10 minutes where I think Katerina, who's kind of been thinking about this for a while, and I would be happy to answer questions. So I'm going to hand this back over to Ala and Felipa.
Yes, thank you so much, Tao. I think I really much enjoyed the discussion we just had, and you sent out very important points in students taking the initiative in shaping their education. And I think the bricks are a very dynamic way to encourage more equity and more flexibility in students also developing their own content. Now, I'm pretty sure a lot of our STF possibly have questions. And now I will take any questions from the STF and open them to both you and Katerina. And you can, of course, answer them as you see fit. So STF, if you have any questions, please raise your hand, or you can type them here in the chat, or you can say me in the chat. And we can start with Kevin.
Hi. Thank you, Dr. Tao, just for the whole explanation. Also, thank you for the benefit to the ScholarRx 360. I just want to share here a little bit. Maybe you can see my camera, I think. Here's my first day 2020.
There you go.
My desk. I'm preparing for the test, so it's really great just to join the conversation. Really grateful for the benefits. And my question is a little more about if you could explain a little more how is to create those bricks, like how a school or a student or an educator can create a brick, and how interactive that process is, or how easy or hard it is to create a brick.
All right. In fact, well, that's a great question, and actually, I think it would be very for Katerina to actually take the first pass, because she came in as a student leader, and also had to figure this out. So, Katerina, could I ask you to answer the question?
Sure. So very briefly, the process of how bricks are developed, and especially message bricks. The first thing we did was to survey all the message organizations and what topics are you working on? What topics would you like to see in this curriculum that are not usually included in the traditional curriculum? We chose the topic of sexual reproductive health and rights because it was the one that all of the organizations, or almost all the organizations, were working on and had it at its priority, as well as the other ones. And then it was time for us to do the learning objectives, as Tao was saying. And I think all of you are kind of medical education nerds like me. So when I'm talking about Bloom taxonomy, and it's something that we've been advocating all along in medical school, of trying to have a knowledge that is applied and makes connections and not just memorizing definitions. So this is how we develop the learning objectives. We don't want the brick to be a simple unidirectional learning, but actually to pose questions and to make you reflect on the content that is being shared. So the first time is that you define the learning objectives and you try to make this experience interesting and interactive. Then there is the learning objectives are reviewed both by everyone as the message representatives and the curriculum committee from ScholarRx, and we launched a call for authors. So, and I think because I saw a question there, the only one that that is already developed is this sexual and reproductive health and rights brick. The others, for diversity, equity, and inclusion, there is a call right now for authors in case you are interested in developing this brick. And the others, we will be sharing a call. So student authors are anyone that is interested, has a bit of proficiency in English, writing English, understands a bit of these medical education backgrounds, and understands the topic. So if you think that there's any topic that you would be interested in and you would add value, just apply. And then there's multiple drafting phases where the author takes the lead and Tao is showing what a brick at the end looks like. So the author will just write the content and try to make these interactive questions and share mnemonics if there are any, and so on. And then you are always supported by an editor. We'll try to make it more active learning style, and will help you if should you include this or not. You are at every step of the process, you have someone to fall back on. And everyone that is in the authors group reviews all of the bricks. A faculty also reviews the bricks. So we have this drafts, phases with reviews. It's kind of 3 phases of drafting, where after input, you incorporate, you rewrite, and then the brick is sent to the development editors who will make it look pretty, which is also very important. I think no one would like to just see a black and white with nothing else. And with the interactive that was showing in the platform. And yep, I think in terms of brick development, that's it.
Yeah, so, you know, that's a fantastic explanation. And I'll just simply add is that, the authors that join the project, generally have a little bit of education experience, but you don't have to have a ton of education experience. We do training as we go along the way. All the authors went through multiple training sessions, and as Katarina says, there are multiple guides, editors working alongside you. And so, really, the most important thing, is really enthusiasm and the willingness to learn. But as Katarina said, there are some minimum prerequisites, and skills that we are looking for. And right now, because there's a limited number of author slots, and there was a lot of interest. It is a competitive application process, but we hope to, as time goes on, there will be more opportunity and more people to get involved. And in the future, the vision is, is that you'll be able to create your own bricks if you want to, just for your own school, and so you can create your own set of needs, your own authoring group if you want, just for your school if you want, and that can be done locally, or in coordination with your regional, IFMSA or EMSA leadership group, or however you want to do it. Hope that helps. Other questions?
Perfect. We do have a question, but I think it quite relates to what has already been said. I think a question on how they can engage in developing bricks, but I think it was explained that a call for authors is opened. And I'm a bit conscious about time because we have 4 minutes, and I think, Tao, you have another commitment.
I can actually go later, so if I can stick around. Apparently, I'm not going to be interrupting another meeting. So
Okay,
go ahead.
perfect. Yes, we have another question as well on how students can make medical education more engaging and impactful, reflecting on their experience that they haven't enjoyed it quite.
Yeah, no, that's a great question, and I think Katarina alluded to a little bit to this. What you see, a lot of it is actually goes back to the andragogy and the pedagogy. How are you? What are the education techniques that you're using to make learning engaging? And so, we use a couple of techniques that we use in first aid, right? I mean, nobody wants to prepare for this incredibly difficult exam, right? But those of you that are using the book, like I think Kevin is using the book, realize that this book actually, can be a little fun, right? We don't take ourselves too seriously. We have a little bit of, we try to utilize humor. We use a narrative. We use a narrative learning process, right? So you notice, for example, a lot of our headers, start off with a question, right? So again, the idea is that we are always priming the learner, and we always have you thinking. That is much more engaging than us, quote unquote, dictating to you. So again, it's a lot of education pedagogy. It's a lot of interactivities. Now, again, this brick is just a PDF. We're going to put it on our digital platform very, very shortly. But all these elements are interactive. All the questions will be interactive. So again, interactivity at a very meaningful level that's tied to the education. we think is really key. The other thing is clinical relevance. And again, if I can get back to, I don't know if you can still see my screen here. Let's see, can you see my screen? Everybody see my screen? Let me get back to the brick. If I go to other bricks, let me go to another, sorry, just go back here. If I go to something else like coronary vascular anatomy, you'll see that there are other cases too. Every single brick has a case. And again, one of the things that I felt that I missed when I was a medical student was when I was learning all this stuff, I didn't really understand what it meant or what impact it has with a patient. But with each of these case connections, we bring the clinical learning directly to you. So creating the meaning really helps, and really helps create the motivation for why you learn, as opposed to memorizing a bunch of abstract pathways and microbiology names and so forth. But if you now understand how the left anterior descending artery really impacts your patient, then you're going to be much more interested in understanding, well, this goes anteriorly and this wraps around the left side, and this is where this impacts the heart, because now I have a visual picture of how this actually will impact the patients that I will be taking care of in the next couple of years. The other things that you might notice here that I didn't really talk about, we will also let educators get involved as well too. You can see actually the educators can actually modify the brick, right? They can add their own notes. This is an instructor note from Professor Harris. Here's a note, I think there's a note down here from Professor Bridges and so forth. And, and they can actually embed their own videos and images and so forth. So this can be quite collaborative for both the students and the educators involved. So again, it's really about integration, engagement, and patient relevance, and using the student voice to help making the education friendly and not something boring that you feel like is a drudgery. I hope that answers the question.
Yes, I think she said it does in the chat. And more of a question from my side as well, because I think a lot of STF would be thinking about this. The Student Task Force represents an aggregation of educational leaders in their context, and maybe a bit more specifically, how do you think they can work or they can benefit from ScholarRx and the bricks to develop their medical education locally?
Yeah. So that's a great question. So where we're at is that, we are using our experience with the message group with the 6 global organizations to work out how best to empower students to do this. It's one thing to say, okay, students do this, but then but we recognize that everybody has different needs, everybody has different levels of experience, and we're learning what the student organizations need. Now we're doing this obviously more at a global international level, but as we develop the experiences, as we develop the rules and the best practices, then we're going to drill down and say, okay, well, we can now do this at an international level. Now how can we do this at a country level? Okay, once we do this at a country level with the NMOs and all the country level organizations, then how can we take this down to the regional level, and then how can we take this down to the school level? So at each step of the way, my hope, and this is an ongoing discussion with Katarina and the other education fellows, is that we will build a toolkit and evolve versions of those toolkits that is basically an all-in-one resource that will allow education leaders at the national and at the regional and at the school level to design and develop their own bricks and to disseminate those bricks to their local populations. Does that help? It's going to take time, but that's the strategic plan and roadmap.
Yes, that's the ultimate vision.
Yeah, Katarina, do you have anything to say about that? Since we're trying to implement. That's part of the vision that we're trying to implement for you guys.
I think one thing that it can be closer to you right now. It is that this sets the example. This is an initiative that is already established, and you can go to your medical school and you can work locally and say, it is already being done. I'm not here alone, but there is this platform that has this interactive and an active way of approaching medical education. So it can be done. So when you're trying to make a change in your curriculum, you can use ScholarRx as an example, and you can share this platform, this approach to medical education with your teachers, so that they see this example. And it's not just coming from you, but it's coming from a large group of people that also believe that this is a good way to do medical education. And this works not only just for the form, but also for the topics. If you think something should be addressed in medical curriculum, as for example, diversity, equity, and inclusion, which usually it's not, there will be a brick about it soon. And you can share that brick and say, hey, don't you think that this should be part of our classes? So it sets the standard, and it's something that you can use when you are talking to your medical school, when you're talking to just one-on-one conversation with a teacher, to use this and share this in kind of as a proof and as a way forward to work with your school.
Yeah, and if I could just add on for just a couple of seconds, just to add on what Katerina said, this is a great way to have a conversation with your leadership. And this is also, I think, a great way to get you up on the ladder of student involvement, because you're going to come in potentially as an equal to say, look, we can provide this resource. We have this resource at the national and the international level. We can localize it, and we will eventually have the tools where we can create our own country in partnership with the students and the education leadership of that school to create curriculum together specifically for our school and for our state, our region, and so forth.
Perfect. I think we have one last question that I will merge into one. There were two. The first question is on how through ScholarRx bricks we can ensure equity and accessibility to middle and lower income countries. And the other question is on whether bricks can be in other languages other than English. So I think it also touches on the point of accessibility.
Yeah, no, both great questions. So, with regards to affordability, again, so that, one of our mission statement is to actually to provide, accessible, sustainable medical education. Because as you can see, a lot of things come and go all the time, and we want to be able to do something that's truly sustainable. So with regards to accessibility and affordability, one is, number one, we made some of our bricks completely free. We will probably every year or so occasionally rotate what are the free bricks so students can use different free bricks. We are working with many schools to provide low-cost education or even no-cost education. I see there's a fellow by the name of Trésor from Rwanda. I don't know if you're at University Global Health Equity, but that's in Rwanda. We have a partnership with them to provide and develop low-cost education for the Africa region, Central Africa. And so there are a number of efforts, with local medical schools. And then three, we, kind of the idea, you've heard the story of we can either provide you the fish or we can teach you how to fish, right? So, so again, that goes back to the tools that we're developing, which will be free. There will be a core set of free tools that you will be able to use to create your own free education. And then we are actually investing, we are actually providing grants. We're providing grants to IFMSA and AMSA and to other student organizations to help them build the capacity to develop their own education, for their membership. Again, all that will be free and accessible through our platform, no cost. Otherwise, with the other ScholarRx bricks, we are working on lower tiered costs for low to middle income countries. We still need to figure it out because it's hard to do technically, to understand who's coming from Africa versus the United States. And then like I said, we're working directly with school. If your school is interested, our promise to the schools is that no school will be turned away because of lack of financial resources. So if your school is interested and they are willing to use the bricks and they're willing to work with us, we will work with them. They will not be turned away because of lack of finance. I hope that helps. And then with regards to internationalization, we recognize that is something that that's going to be a challenge. Right now, the best way to do this is, it's a bit of a hack, is to use the Google Translate and set the translation to your language. It's not perfect, as you know, but it does help, especially if you know some English. You can set the Google Translate this way. In the future, we haven't really talked about it, but as time goes on, we are exploring consortiums that might help us with global translation in the future, so that we can give you a Spanish version or a Portuguese version, or or whatever. But yeah, that is something that we're thinking about.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Tao, for that answer. And I think a lot of our students are actually in very good relations with their educational leadership. And I encourage you a lot to start this conversation and share the experience of ScholarRx. I don't think we have any more questions left. And also with respect to time, I think we can finalize today's session. It's been an absolute honor to have you on board with us again, Tao, and Katerina and Jeff as well. ScholarRx have always been one of the strongest supporters for students and student empowerment, and especially student engagement in medical education. We're very happy that you continue to support the Student Task Force, and I'm pretty sure the STF as well are very excited. If you are, you can say so in the chat, but I think the enthusiasm is well communicated. So as always, thank you again, Tao, and see you, because you would be seeing us in our black t-shirts in AMEE. We hope to meet your avatar.
All right, absolutely. Yeah, I need to get in there and make my avatar as well too. So, all right. Well, again, thank you everyone for your time and for listening and really, your passion. Again, I want to say it's you that's driving the future medical education. People like Ala, Katerina, Felipa, you are our future. So we owe it to you to support you with the resources and the tool to transform education for future generations of students and their patients. Thank you, everyone.
Exactly.
And thank you, Karen.
Yes, thank you, Katerina, as well. And one final word from my side. One of the reasons we wanted to start with this webinar is to showcase how students can always continue to lead in their education. We hope this has inspired you. And a message from Katerina in the chat is, don't forget students to students, S2S, and enjoy your day, hopefully. Katerina, do you have any final words?
I said it in the chat, so have a good day, everyone.
Perfect. Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you, everyone. And have fun. We'll see you next week at AMEE.
See you next week. Goodbye.
Bye.